Excellent. Yes, it's 10:32. Good morning, everyone. And I believe our webinar is now being streamed live on the Essex County Council Democracy YouTube channel. Welcome, everyone, to our December Development Regulation Committee meeting. Before we start the meeting itself, I've got a few notes which I will read out. At the beginning of the meeting, I shall invite each member to briefly introduce themselves in turn to certify that they're all there. All microphones during presentation and any public speaking will be muted. Members are indicated to are asked to indicate their wish to address the meeting by using the raise hand function, as we're all well accustomed to. Public speakers will be promoted to panelists for the duration and then change back to attendees. Members are reminded of the addendum that has been circulated. There were two, one latest one that's come out this morning. I will ask that you all treat this meeting as we were in County Hall and pay full attention to the meeting. And please don't take any telephone calls during the duration. If you're not present during the whole of an item, you will not be able to participate in the votes. You will be asked to confirm this at the start of the voting. All voting application will be conducted on a named vote basis, so I shall ask each member individually to indicate whether they are in favour, against or abstain. The clerk will then confirm the overall results. I shall be very clear about starting and finishing the meeting, but please be aware that comments must still be audible both during and after the meeting. Now, please note that this meeting is taking place as a virtual meeting only, with access to the general public. The sound from the meeting is being webcast and will be available on the Essex County Council website after the meeting. As already announced, this meeting will be broadcast live over the internet. It will be publicly available on the Essex County Council website after the meeting is finished. We are streaming this meeting live to the Essex County Council Democracy YouTube channel. In addition to the audio broadcast and recording of both will be on the internet soon after the meeting. More details on accessing the meeting will be can be found on page 1 of the agenda. We'll now go through the list of members. Councillor Aldridge.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Aspinall.
Councillor Aspinall, present, Chairman.
Councillor Blackwell. No, he's absent. Councillor Garnett.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Harris.
Good morning, Chairman. Season's greetings. Understood everything you've said. Thank you.
Councillor Hillier.
Here, Chairman.
Councillor Jowers.
Present.
Councillor Moran.
Present.
Councillor Reeves.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Steptoe.
Good morning, Chairman.
And I think that's the list completed. Thank you very much, everyone. We now go to agenda item 1, apologies, substitution and declaration of interest. Mrs. Campion.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received an apology from Councillor McCrory and there is no substitute. Thank
you very much indeed. Item 2 is the minutes. Do we agree that the minutes are a true record of what happened last month?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you very much, members. Item 3, public speaking. Mrs. Campion, do we have any public speakers?
Thank you, Chairman. We haven't had any notification of public speakers.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 4 is mineral and waste. 4.1. Highwood Quarry, Great Damo. That's in the very capable hand of Mrs. Claire Tomlin. Over to you.
Good morning, members. Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen just to remind people of where the site is. Has that appeared?
It has.
Right, good. Okay. This application the two applications relate to Highwood Quarry, which is just west of Great Dunmow. Members may recall that we considered these applications in June of this year, and it was resolved to grant permission subject to conditions and legal agreement. There are basically two permissions that relate to the site. One relates to the mineral permission, which is outlined in purple, and one relates to the recycling facility that operates in conjunction with the mineral site. And the application sought to amend the hours of operation of the site, namely to actually allow lorries to leave the site between 6 and 7 a.m. in the morning. So each application related to each permission. You may recall there was a 1-year trial where they were allowed to leave between 6 and 7 in the morning. There'll be no other activity on site apart from the lorries leaving, and they would have been loaded the night before. The plan permissions as in June were resolved to be granted subject to conditions and legal obligations. In particular, the legal obligations sought to ensure that when the lorries leave between 6 and 7, it is that they only use the westbound A120 and they travel on the M11. And the main purpose of them asking for the early operation was to be able to serve London and get in before the rush hour. So those obligations were secured as part of the 1-year trial and have been carried forward into this new into these legal agreements. Now, the legal agreements are circulating for signing. They have been finalised, and they are actually with the landowner at the moment for signing. Unfortunately, it seems unlikely that they will actually be signed within the 6 months that we were seeking, which would be at the end of this month. So therefore, I'm seeking an extra 3 months. I'm hoping that actually they'll probably be signed very soon after the new year. But it's just to seek an additional 3 months to complete those legal agreements, and the conditions are as in set out in Appendix A and Appendix B. It should be noted that there might be some changes to those conditions just to include details that have been approved since the committee meeting. So the recommendation is an extension of 3 months to complete the legal agreements.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Tomlin. Do we have any members who wish to speak?
So moved.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Giles. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Well, I will go now to the vote. Councillor Aldridge.
For.
Councillor Aspinall.
Councillor Aspinall, 4.
Councillor Blackwell is absent. Councillor Garnett.
For.
Councillor Harris.
Harris is 4.
Councillor Hillier.
4.
Councillor Jowers.
4.
Councillor Moran.
4.
Councillor Reeves.
4.
Councillor Steptoe.
4.
And I'm also in favour. Ms. Campion, would you confirm?
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous, 10 voting for.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd just like to refer back to item 1 of the agenda, declaration of interest. Although I did announce nobody raised their hands, can we confirm that there are no declaration of interest on today's agenda from any members? Okay, I see nobody's raised hands. Thank you very much, member, for confirming. We go to agenda item 5.1, Dunton Fields Earlier Centre, and that's with Miss Rachel Edney. Over to you, Rachel.
Lovely, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I'll just share my screen.
Chairman, sorry, just before Rachel starts a presentation, could I ask that members mute their microphones, because I don't know about other members, I'm getting quite a bit of feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The presentation is on the screen, Rachel.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Members may recall that this application was considered at committee in May this year and was deferred for a decision as members had concerns about several issues regarding the design of the building, particularly the flat roof in the residential area, the use of cladding and render, and the general design of the building. The application is for the construction of an early years centre for 56 children, including external play areas, landscaping, car and cycle parking provision and a parents drop-off zone. The nursery is expected to open to children in September 2021 and would help Essex County Council meet its statutory duty in providing early years provision in the area. Dunton Fields is a new housing development granted planning permission in 2013 by Basildon Borough Council. It comprises 450 dwellings, new roads and open spaces. Within the development, an area of land was allocated to the County Council through the Section 106 agreement for the provision of an early years centre. There are residential properties to the north and the southwest in Warwick Crescent and south in Rodine Crescent. To the east is the Hemels Industrial Estate, and to the north beyond the residential properties is the A127 Southend Arterial Road. To the east of the site is a storage attenuation pond created as part of the residential development, and this is on land owned by the developer of the site. The proposed location for the nursery is currently in an undeveloped grassed area of land. The fencing around the site is 2 metre high weld mesh fencing, which forms the boundary of the site and will remain as is, albeit with the inclusion of gates for the vehicular and pedestrian access and an emergency access gate on the northern boundary. This photo is taken from Warwick Crescent to the west of the site, with the Hemels industrial area in the background and residential properties in Rodine Crescent to the right and Warwick Crescent to the left. The proposed nursery building would be situated towards the northwest corner of the site, with outdoor play areas extending towards the western boundary. The main pedestrian and vehicular access would be to the southwestern corner of the site, with a car parking area for 15 cars, including one disabled space, to the east. A drop-off zone for parents would be provided close to the main entrance of the building, and adjacent to the main entrance would be a covered buggy store. Covered cycle parking storage would be provided to the southwestern corner of the site. The proposed nursery building could accommodate 56 children, comprising 12 0 to 2-year-olds, 20 2 to 3-year-olds, and 24 3 to 4-year-olds. A classroom would be provided for each age group, and outdoor covered play areas could be accessed directly from each classroom. Office accommodation, staff room, kitchen facilities, toilet and washing facilities, including accessible facilities, and a laundry area would be provided within the building. As stated previously, when this application was first presented to committee in May 20 this year, members had concerns about the overall design of the building, the use of timber cladding, which was considered to be a potential fire hazard, the appropriateness of a flat roof in a residential area, and the health and safety aspects of the site relating to the proximity of the attenuation storage area. The original design of the building was a single-storey building with a shallow pitched roof. The elevational treatments consisted of a mix of vertical timber weatherboarding and an off-white beige render. With committee members, Basildon Borough Council and the county's urban designer expressed concerns, particularly with regard to the roofline and the use of the external materials. The surrounding residential properties are traditional in appearance, consisting of a mix of 2 and 3 stories, with pitched roofs and dormer windows. The external material palette consists of buff and red brick, cream-coloured render and weatherboarding, and roof materials consist of artificial slate and red tiles. Following the comments made at committee, the design and external materials of the proposed building have been amended. The building would remain as a single-storey construction with a monopitch roof over the classroom areas and a nominally flat roof over the administrative areas. The ridge of the monopitch roof would be 5.2 metres in height. The external materials now comprise of buff brick and a coloured render. A more vibrant colour render has been selected for the building to differentiate its use from the residential properties and create a more
Rachel, I think we've lost.
welcoming building for the western elevation of the building.
Rachel, sorry, Rachel, could you start that sentence again? We lost connection there.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, a more vibrant colour render has been selected for the building to differentiate its use from the residential properties and create a more welcoming building for the children. Brightly coloured render panels would be provided to the western elevation of the building facing the outdoor play areas. The monopitch roof would be clad in lightweight metro tile tiles, similar in tone and colour to the roofs of the surrounding properties. Representations have been received from local residents stating that the proposed design is now more in keeping with the residential area. However, they have raised concerns about the bright colour of the render and its suitability of use in a residential area. The county's urban designer has not raised an objection to the amended design and external materials of the building. The change of render colour is considered to be a much more suitable colour that matches the rest of the building, and it is considered that this has helped the building to read as one form, and along with the proposed roof form will help the building become a much more prominent building within the community. And the next couple of slides just show some visuals of what the proposed building would look like. An amended landscaping plan has also been submitted. New hedgerows would be planted along the northern, southern and western boundaries of the site. Low ground cover shrubs would be planted within the car parking area, together with 4 new trees, and low ground cover shrubs would also be planted in the roundabout area created by the one-way traffic system within the site. As stated previously, the 2-metre high weld mesh fence forming the boundary of the site would remain with the inclusion of gates for pedestrian and vehicular traffic. And there would also be an emergency access gate in this elevation, in this boundary here. 1.2 metre high picket fencing would separate the play areas for the 0 to 2-year-olds and the older children. 1.8 metre high close boarded fencing would be erected around the bin store located in the southwestern corner of the site. The county's landscape architect has no objection to the proposed scheme, subject to a condition, and has welcomed the amendments that has been made to the landscaping. It is considered appropriate to attach the standard condition with regard to replacement landscaping should planning permission be granted. A total of 14 representations have been received, and these are set out in the committee report and in the addendum. A majority of these raise concerns about existing parking and traffic problems on the estate and the potential impact the proposed development may have on existing problems. Places for the nursery would be available for local residents, and as the area is well connected by shared foot and cycleways, parents would be encouraged to walk or cycle their children to the nursery. A covered buggy store would be provided adjacent to the main entrance of the building to encourage parents to walk to the facility. The road layout of the residential development was approved by Basildon Borough Council as part of the application determined by it, and the location for the nursery was determined by the area of land allocated to the County Council by the developer as part of the Section 106 agreement. There are no parking restrictions on a majority of the roads within the estate, although residents have requested residential parking schemes and other parking restrictions to help reduce the existing parking problems. Residents have stated that restrictions are being introduced in a piecemeal fashion, which is pushing the problem further into the estate. There are also no current public transport routes around the estate, which residents consider could lead to a greater reliance on private cars. At pre-application stage, 9 car parking spaces were proposed for the nursery development. This was increased to 15 car parking spaces, including 1 disabled space, following adverse comments from local residents. 8 cycle parking spaces would be provided within the site for use by staff and parents. The car and cycle parking provision would be in accordance with the recommendations of the adopted parking standards guidance. A drop-off and pick-up zone would be provided adjacent to the main entrance of the building for use by parents. The Highway Authority has no objection to the proposed development and has commented that car parking and cycle parking provision would be in accordance with the current parking standards. The site is accessible by foot and cycle, and the scheme as submitted is not considered detrimental to highway safety, capacity or efficiency, and is considered to be acceptable, subject to the conditions listed at the end of the committee report. The proposed nursery would help ensure that Essex County Council meets its statutory duty to provide early years provision for children living in the local area. The amended design and proposed external materials of the building are considered to be appropriate for its function as an educational building and would take account of its surroundings within a residential area. No objections have been received from consultees, subject to conditions detailed in the committee report and addendum, and the proposal is considered to be in accordance with local plan policies. Subject to the conditions listed in the committee report and within the addendum, it is considered that planning permission should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There's no public speaking on this application, and I've got Councillor Hillier has got his hand up. Councillor Hillier, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad that Ms. Edney's been able to clarify the ownership of the attenuation pond, which is a matter I raised the other day. And it's just whether we have any knowledge whether that is in the ownership of the developer in perpetuity, with no provision or with restrictions on it to any further development on that particular area. I think that is probably quite an important element for us to consider. The other thing to consider, that School Avenue, which people, if you see the map, is close to. School Avenue is a through route from Langdon High Road through to Ford Dunton. And that was put in there at the time of the initial permission to avoid congestion on Langdon High Road. And I do believe that there's also was made available so that there was a proposal for a bus route to go through on School Avenue. Now, of course, at the present moment, with the current pandemic problems that we have, of course, public transport, particularly in terms of bus operators, they're probably not going to rush to put a service in there at the present moment. But I do think that at some time there will be a service put in there, and that will alleviate some of the traffic issues around there. But I mean, other than that, I can see that what we've got here is a vast improvement on what came to us before, and I think that you know the points have been taken on board that are required, and I can't see any particular issues with the granting of permission on this site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. Ms. Edney, would you like to respond to those points?
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as far as I know, I mean, the applicant did confirm that the area of land with the attenuation storage area is within the control of the developer. So I would assume if they ever wanted to change that, they would need to put in a planning permission to Basildon. Depending what they wanted to do, that would need a planning permission to Basildon Borough Council. But obviously, we have no control over that piece of land. And yes, I think probably a bus route would be welcomed on the estate and would probably help to alleviate the use of private cars within the area. But obviously that is outside the control of planning at this stage.
Yeah, are you okay with that response?
Chairman, yes. I just wanted to make those comments more to alert other committee members of the issues around there, rather than necessarily requiring obviously response, which I'm very pleased to have anyway. Thank you.
Very much. I will go to Councillor Aldridge. You're next.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased that obviously there has been some movement on the design of this building, but it again raises the question of whether we could have received in the first instance the design well before it came to this committee. And of course, having made that point and asked them to go back and redesign, again, we have to wait until today to see effectively the design. And that, I'm afraid, is not the way in which we should really be hurried to making these decisions. I just want to make that point. The second point is that having just been considering various aspects, I'm interested to know what eco-friendly devices have been employed in the construction of this school, whether we're talking about the form of heating, the form of roofing, whether there'll be solar panels, what the insulation is like, etc. And of course, one of the major things in early years schools is the fact that there is adequate storage, which invariably is not the case. And I haven't heard any of those things in this particular presentation. So if I may say so, I think that whilst I'm not prepared to object to this development, which clearly we are now up against a deadline of time to get it in place by the autumn of next year, I do feel that we really ought to have a presentation which gives us a much clearer idea the direction in which the County Council is taking in the development of its properties.
Councillor Aldridge, can I bring in Mr. Greaves to address the first point that Councillor Aldridge made about the design coming back to us?
Chairman, yeah, it's taken a while to get some revised drawings to come in and some revisions to come in, and Rachel's managed to get that out to consultation in a sort of double quick period, and then before members, as you sort of allude to, very, very quickly indeed. I think Councillor Aldridge is talking about generally committees sort of having advanced sight of perhaps school design before the application lands. We've not done that historically, but the application is online and we publicise that accordingly, and members are quite willing to go into our system anytime to look at the applications that we are dealing with, and maybe take it away from this meeting and maybe we could have a private conversation about how we can probably give the committee advanced sight of some of the proposals we're dealing with, if that's acceptable. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
That's fine. I think that's a very good suggestion, and we can have a conversation offline on that. And Rachel, would you like to pick up the other 2 points that Councillor Aldridge has just made?
Yeah, sorry, apologies, Councillor Aldridge. There is a section in the committee report on sustainability, a short section, so I apologise for not including that in my presentation.
That's all right.
But that does include a section on sort of leading to reduction in waste and increasing recycling, the levels of natural daylighting, natural ventilation and heating and cooling to the building. There are no solar panels proposed for this particular development, but the building has been designed to modern installation standards in accordance with building regulations, and it would use low maintenance materials. And the wood used in the construction of the building would be acquired from sustainable sources. So I apologise, next time I will include that in a presentation.
Can I thank Rachel, Chairman, for that presentation. I've also wondered on just one aspect, which was the colour of rendering, whether or not the experts have decided this is a colour which is friendly, whether perhaps the residents could be asked what colour they actually would like it to be.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that was a comment, wasn't it? Thank you. I think, and also your point about the eco-friendliness of the building was following our briefing, excellent briefing we had earlier today on the sustainable, renewable, and carbon neutral measures that the County Council is set to be introducing with every future application. Thank you, Ms. Edney, for your response. I'll go to Councillor Steptoe. You're next on the list.
Thank you, Chairman. I know that the site is adjacent to the A127. The A127 is subject to various concerns about emissions. Several questions here. First question is, has an assessment been taken into account of the emissions coming from the A127 onto the site? Secondly, ongoing with those emissions, how will they be monitored and how will they be looked at? And thirdly, over the last few days, there's been a lot in the press about the young lady that lived near or adjacent to the South Circular Road in London, where the coroner has now ruled that the emissions from the South Circular were certainly a contributing factor to her death. Does that give any implications into this particular application going forward from that coroner's ruling? It'd be interesting to know whether there's anything there to be taken into account. Thank you.
Councillor Steptoe. Ms. Edney, would you like to address those three issues that Councillor Steptoe just raised?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, like I say, as far as I know, there's been no assessment made of the emissions from the A127 as part of this application. And it's not been raised. So I'm not sure how the applicant is going to monitor the emissions or deal with those with the as part of this application.
Grave, would you like to say something about air quality?
Yeah, Chairman. This I understand Basildon. It's an issue primarily for Basildon Borough Council into ensuring that there is no increase in sort of air quality or poor air quality coming from the A127, as far as I'm aware. So it's not necessarily that this development causes a problem around air quality. It's the impact on the children from the pollution that's been caused from the A127 that could be an issue. But that's a matter to reduce pollution levels coming from the A127 rather than preventing surrounding development that doesn't cause additional air quality. So in terms of this particular application, whilst you know, air quality standards, and I don't have all the detail in front of me, may be quite high within that area, it would be sort of separate legislation and powers that would be looked at in order to bring that air quality up to standard, if that makes sense, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Greaves. Councillor Steptoe, are you okay with that explanation?
Yes, I do understand the answer, and perhaps it's become more topical in the last couple of months or so with this particular issue. Can I suggest that perhaps an informative should be put on the planning that the site operator should have some form of monitoring system to ensure the safety of the children from emissions coming from the A127, just some form of monitoring system.
Mrs. Millward, would you like to comment on that can be something that can be done?
I suppose, Chairman, the issue is, does it relate to this development? I think, as Mr. Greaves pointed out, you know, clearly, if there is an issue, it's for the area generally, and not specifically for this one site location. I think when Rachel went through her presentation, we can see that this is a site that's sandwiched around other developments, so it's not the first development, it's almost the last bit of development here. I can see absolutely where Councillor Steptoe is coming from, but I agree that with what Richard said, in the sense that it's a problem about how the A127, if it is the A127, affects all the adjacent areas, which is a big issue that this school, this early years facility, could not resolve. It seems perhaps slightly unreasonable, looking at the various tests for conditions, to require this one particular fairly small individual building to carry out that sort of pollution monitoring, but of course it would be open to, as Richard identified, Basildon Council under their, I think it would be their environmental health remit, to consider whether they felt they wanted to do some monitoring in the area and consider what action could be potentially taken accordingly.
Ward, I think we're going to take another the issue about the early sites of changing in thing in design and colours. Maybe we can take this offline as well, and maybe we can come back to the committee when that conversation takes place. Councillor Steptoe, okay.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just feel that there should be, it's very relevant in this day and age now that some form of monitoring, which can easily be done. It's not a major onerous task that can be done. I think perhaps it should be included somewhere within the system.
Thank you for raising that. My next speaker is Councillor Jowers.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and I congratulate Rachel. It was quite extraordinary, really. I'd give my right arm to have this building in my division. And I think we need a reminder that we are a planning committee and we are looking at revisions to an application that we have already debated and discussed. I find it extraordinarily efficient, the way that, in fact, you've transformed what was a blot on the landscape to something which is pretty well acceptable. Now, in many ways, looking at timber can be fireproof. It is always fireproof. In fact, you can't find timber nowadays that isn't. So looking at this, I think that everything we asked for at the last meeting, in my view, has been not just done and sorted out for us, but in fact, it's come up far better than I would have expected. So, not that I'm being sort of optimistic or my glass is more than half full, but I think you've done a really good job on this. And if I were a parent in that vicinity, I would be as chuffed as little apples to have such a facility. So, we can go round and round our handbags on minutiae, but from my point of view, I think you've done really well and I will propose acceptance.
Very good of you. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Giles. And obviously very good point about the speed in which Rachel has worked with the applicant and come back to committee. The next speaker is Councillor Hillier.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to respond, I think, to Councillor Steptoe's points for the benefit of committee members who are not aware of the situation along the A127. Councillor Steptoe will know that the government are involved in monitoring air pollution along the 127. Their proposals have been put forward for a charging zone, which is trying to be resisted with the greatest thing. But at this moment, I think there are higher authorities looking into the air quality along the 127 than we on this committee are. I think also that the comments that Councillor Steptoe made about the coroner's ruling, I think are going to have problems more generally than just this one. But I think he's right to raise it, because I think that is going to be an issue that translates to almost every authority in this country that has issues. And if I may just be naughty for a minute, Chairman, if it weren't for all the residents of Rochford passing through Basildon to get to the M25 or London, it might be less pollution. But I'm being naughty, Chairman, sorry.
Thank you very much for clarifying that point, Councillor Hillier. The next speaker is Councillor Moran.
Thank you very much. Can I echo Councillor Showers' comments about how quickly and how suitably the amendment's been made and it come back before this committee? I'm very pleased to see that. There's one issue that we talked about the last time, and that is that when we looked at this site, and I've looked at it extensively on the map, why they put this facility as close to the A127 as it is, I do not know. It doesn't just happen with this application, it happens with other applications, that they end up giving things like schools or a nursery, like in this case, the scrap of land. whereas it would have been maybe a lot more suitable for a more central position within the development. And I think it's difficult for us as a committee to maybe make that big influence on people, but possibly some conversations with district councils to actually say that when a planner is designing an estate, the schools and the nurseries should be in the best prime position. And if that includes things like access, and particularly includes things like in the place where it's going to have the lowest level of pollution, that's what we should be doing. Thank you very much, Chair.
Moran, thank you very much for your input. This is something that was raised a few committees ago about the early input of and the difficulties that there is in members of this committee to have an input in master planning when new estates are designed. I totally agree with what you said, that our own officers need to engage, which I'm sure they already do, with district planning authorities to ensure that those schools are placed, as you say, in the most prominent and best place within the estate and not being given the leftovers, as you pointed out. Maybe Mr. Greaves will take that away as well.
Yes, Chairman, I'll take that away and speak to my colleagues. Yeah.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Reeves next.
Thank you, Chairman. Just two minor points. It's on page 111, where you have the plan of the school and the parking areas. I can see where you have the disabled parking, space number 1. Why is there a little line down? You've got where you've got the wheelchair, and then you've got a little line. Why is that line there? It's a much bigger space, I can see, but why is there a line down sort of 3/4 of the side of the disabled space?
Ms. Sedney, would you like to respond?
I can't read what it says, so that's why I've asked the question. Can you see where I mean? It's between the disabled bit and parking space 2. Wondered why there was a sort of a line down the side of that parking space.
I think it's maybe just to indicate that it is a wider space. So there's a line to delineate the parking space, but then there's an extra area for, I think, for wheelchair users, just to show that they need that extra space for access to that side of the car, just to discourage people from parking up against the first line.
Right, and why are parking spaces 2, 3 and 4 proud of parking space 1, leaving a space at the back to the boundary? Why don't they go right the way back to the boundary like space number 1 does? Or is there going to be some trees or something there?
That I can't answer, I'm afraid, Councillor Reeves. It could be it's just going to be a small strip of landscaping to the rear of those car parking spaces.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I think there's been, as you said in your presentation, an increase in the numbers of parking there, Ms. Hedney, hasn't there?
Yeah, I think at the pre-app stage there was 9 parking spaces proposed, and that's been increased to 15.
15. Thank you. That's lovely. Well, I've got no other speakers left.
Chairman.
Oh, Councillor Aspinall. Yeah, please do. Please come in. Yeah.
I did the right thing by pressing star and 9, which should have activated an arm, apparently. But obviously it hasn't.
No, it hasn't, Councillor Aspinall, but please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, I welcome the positive notes from my colleagues on this application, and welcome the fact that the design has come back to us vastly improved from the Lego block that was put before us before. Although I have to agree somewhat with Councillor Aldridge that I think we've missed a slight trick here where I can't see it in front of me, but it's been described to me. The roof line doesn't extend right across the whole building. The steep part of the building is over where the children are at school, and the slight slope is over the residential, so to speak, part of the building. If the roof had been over the whole of the building, you've got automatically in that space, you've got lots of storage space. You could have put some solar panels up in the right places. You could have put some dormer or Velux windows in for additional light, or even a false chimney or false bonnets on there to make it look really good. So I think it's almost there, but not quite as far as I'm concerned. It could have been an awful lot better, but I'm happy that it's been considered and looked at. I'm not happy that the presentation we had before the meeting is being enacted, it seems, with this design. So I wonder if someone could explain why that's happened. If this is a county council building, why our county council people that were looking at carbon reduction and energy efficiency haven't commented on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. Can I go to Mr. Greaves? Because obviously we asked similar question at the earlier briefing. Mr. Greaves.
Yes, Chairman. I think Rachel explained that, the building has been designed sustainably, and whilst it might not tick every single net zero box, that's very much work in progress. And the presentation this morning did talk about how buildings are proposed to retrofit, but this is a very much work in progress. So the pilot schemes are yet to be rolled out, and this is not one of the pilot schemes. So I suspect that given the presentation this morning, it would be much easier to retrofit this building in 5, I can't remember exactly when he said, it was 2030, wasn't it, that it'd be, because they're in terms of the county council's stock. So this building will have been designed to easily take that retrofit, should it have to meet those standards in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Greaves. Councillor Aspinall, are you okay with that response? Councillor Aspinall, you're unmuted now.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I wouldn't say happy, no, but I can see that the council, the designers have done as much as they can at this stage.
Okay, thanks so much, Councillor Aspinall, for your input on that. So we've had Councillor Giles proposed the recommendation as on page 133, with of course the revised condition 2 and the deletion of 4 and 5 and the replacement with condition 4. Do I have a seconder?
Chairman, quite happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. I will now go to the vote. Councillor Aldridge.
For.
Councillor Aspinall.
Against.
Councillor Blackwall is absent. Councillor Garnett.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Hillier.
For.
Councillor Jowers.
For.
Councillor Moran.
For.
Councillor Reeves.
For.
Councillor Steptoe.
For.
And I am also in favour. Ms. Scampion, would you like to confirm the voting?
Thank you, Chairman. So I've got 9 voted for and 1 voted against.
Thank you very much indeed. That application is carried. Thank you very much. We'll now go to agenda item 6, enforcement 6.1, enforcement service update. I think you presented that, Mr. Greaves.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's a relatively brief report, but the reason I've kind of brought this before members today is just to really highlight that we are dealing with a considerable uplift in enforcement cases right now, and I've tried to set out what that looks like on paper, but actually behind the scenes, it's probably a lot more than that. Since we had the original lockdown, we seem to have perhaps quite a few unscrupulous waste operators moving around the county, going on to land and doing what they want to do, which is obviously meant that we've got to react to that, and which has been difficult actually when we couldn't originally get out on site. And members are probably aware we only have one enforcement officer, Suzanne Armstrong, who does a tremendous job covering the whole of the county. And she works very closely alongside the Environment Agency and district councils when appropriate. What's tended to happen is Suzanne's been occupied with getting quite a few complaints about these unauthorised waste uses springing up around the county. And I think that's probably because there's probably a lot more people keeping an eye on things these days, given that perhaps people are working at home more and can see what's happening in the locality. Suzanne has unfortunately been unable to deal with everything at once. She's been supported considerably by planning officers and myself in dealing with this, these complaints, but members will probably appreciate that some of the complaints relate to high priority incidents and some treated with not so much priority. Of course, some of members of the public, if they're not getting an immediate response, are now tending to put a complaint in against the service and the efficiency of the service that I'm now having to help Suzanne out with, so Suzanne can then keep occupied with dealing with the main priority enforcement cases. And that has involved serving stop notices, temporary stop notices around the county. And you know, we bring the enforcement report to members, and members can see those cases every quarter. So the report, technically, there was probably no need to bring this report because our local enforcement and site monitoring plan does say that we will normally deal with complaints within a certain time scale. It doesn't say we will deal with those complaints within that time scale. It says we normally will. But I did want a belt and braces approach on this, and to just draw it to the attention of the committee that I am seeking a sort of relaxation of rigidly applying those timescales in the local enforcement plan until the end of June 2021. And then that will hopefully enable Suzanne and myself to prioritise cases, work out the ones that she should be working on. And then there may be delay in those non-priority cases behind the scenes, but without so much of a risk that residents may start to put complaints in against the authority because we haven't perhaps responded to something within 2 days, as opposed to, you know, as we're doing now, it might take 3 or 4 days. So the timescales are set out in the report. We do acknowledge complaints normally within 2 days, and we would normally investigate them and respond to them within 14 days. But that hasn't been possible with some cases, not all cases, hence the recommendation before members today. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Greaves. And I'm sure that every member of the committee will be thankful that you have given Suzanne great support during times that people forget that we're not, you know, in the normal world. Councillor Aldridge, you raise your hand.
Just to say, to endorse what you've just said, Chairman, I think the officers have done extremely well in the very difficult circumstances here, and I'm very grateful for this report to be brought up and the support that obviously our enforcement officer is being given. It does seem to me, however, just as an observation, that there are a great number of these unscrupulous waste developments that are going on throughout the county, and whilst they continue, though, of course, they are making big bucks out of it. At the end of the day, we enforce and we stop them doing it, but we very rarely see them being brought to book on this one. In other words, it's a major advantage to them, and they'll continue to do it as long as they can. But there doesn't seem to be, if you like, a fine or any other sort of address for those people that do knowingly breach our laws on waste disposal and waste collection. And I mean, it's just an observation. Maybe I'm wrong, but it does seem to me that if we actually were a bit more draconian with our enforcement, if we were permitted to be a little bit more draconian with our enforcement, I think perhaps we could reduce the number of these unscrupulous people.
Thank you, Councillor Aldridge. I think before I go to Mr. Graves, Suzanne has got a great expertise of working with the partners such as the Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive. And not so long ago, there was quite a heavy fine imposed on one of the transgressor, but I'm sure that Mr. Graves will give a bit more information on that.
Sorry, Chairman. Yeah, well, I mean, just to come back on that wider point, we forged a closer relationship with our trading standards colleagues, and the reason we've done that is with a view to looking towards the Proceeds of Crime Act to tackle some of these cases, particularly the cases where we feel that a lot of money has been made from these unauthorised uses. So we are looking at that, and we do have a couple of cases in the background that I'll not talk specifically around now, that we are looking at whether we can go down that avenue, because at the end of the day, if the penalty is quite light under planning law, there may be other legislation we can exploit that might send a wider message out to the perpetrators that it is quite serious what they're doing. So yeah, I mean, Suzanne does work closely with the Environment Agency. Often the Environment Agency's powers are more stringent than ours, so where possible we would probably lean towards the Environment Agency to take action. And there is a waste crime team now that's employed by the Environment Agency that Suzanne is working really closely with. So I think the point is here, yeah, we don't have any pending prosecutions at this stage, but there could be some in the future. And if we are successful, particularly under that Proceeds of Crime Act legislation, then I'll bring a report back to the committee and make the committee aware in due course.
That's excellent. Thank you very much indeed. I've seen Councillor Aspinall frame come up a couple of times. Were you trying to come in, Councillor Aspinall? No, he's disappeared completely now.
I think he has, unfortunately, Chairman. Yes, I will keep an eye on the attendees, and when he tries to rejoin, I'll admit him straight away.
Because the frame on the screen kind of highlighted itself.
Okay.
Come in or not? Okay, that's lovely. Councillor Steptoe, did you have your hand up? That's disappeared now.
Yes, Chairman, I did. I was going to raise the point about the proceeds of crime, but the officer has already picked up on that.
Excellent, well done. Thank you very much. So we've got a recommendation on page 140 to extend the investigation time and response time until June 2021. Do I have a proposal on that recommendation?
Propose that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Thank you. We'll now go to the vote. We have Councillor Aldridge.
For.
Councillor Aspinall is, unfortunately, we've lost connection. Councillor Blackwell is absent. Councillor Garnett.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Elia.
For.
Councillor Jowers.
For.
Councillor Moran.
For.
Councillor Reeves.
For.
Councillor Steptoe.
For.
And I'm also in favour for that. Campion.
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous with those present. 9 voted for.
Thank you very much for confirming. Now we go to agenda item 7, information items, 7.1 stats, and again we see 100% success rate there with dissemination. Thank you to the team, Mr. Greaves, if you pass that. Thanks. Date of next meeting will be 22nd of January 2021, and urgent business I have none, and urgent exempt business there's none likewise. Before I close the meeting, would just like to put on record there's been a few comments about the speed in which Ms. Hedney came back to committee with the early years centre applications. So can we please record that in the minutes? It's quite fast to get everybody lined up and have such a much improved scheme in front of us. And unfortunately, there was a school which was school expansion that was determined by the delegated powers, which happens to be in my division. The design of that was absolutely stunning. And unfortunately, I was hoping to bring it to committee, but there wasn't enough opposition and any reason to bring it to, just to show that there is some good design out there. And yes, so if you can do that, Ms. Campbell, it'd be very helpful. And yes, all is left for me to. Oh, Councillor Aspinall, you come back.
I'm having terrible trouble with phone connection this morning, and it looks like I'm going to have to say goodbye and wish you all a very good Christmas and see you soon afterwards, so to speak.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Aspinall. Very good of you. And yes, that's what's left for me to do, to wish everybody very happy Christmas. And the sooner we shut the door on 2020 and we open the one on 2021, the better we'll be all round.
Yeah, quite right.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Absolutely.
Happy Christmas to everybody else. Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas
to everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.